In this episode, we will be discussing excluded employees under Article 82 of the Labor Code. To protect the interest of the employees, there is a portion in the Labor Code called Conditions of Employment. In this particular portion of the Labor Code, the laws require the employer to provide certain minimum benefits to the employees. In other words, even if it's not stipulated in the contract of the employer and the employee, these provisions in the Labor Code are deemed written in the contract and the employers are required to provide them anyway. That portion is found in Title I, Book 3 of the Labor Code. But not all employees are subject to the protection provided for in this provision. Some employees are excluded from the protection, and those employees are listed in Article 82 of the Labor Code, which means that if a particular category of employee is listed in Article 82, those types of employees will not benefit from the conditions of employment provisions in the Labor Code. Hence, if you are confronted by this question in the bar examination, you are required to memorize two sets of information. The first set of information are those employees listed in Article 82, and the second set of information are those benefits listed in Title I, Book 3 of the Labor Code, which is Article 83 up to Article 96. The first type of excluded employees are managerial employees. I would suspect that the law excluded managerial employees because they don't need the minimum benefits. Ordinarily, managerial employees receive more than the minimum. That's why perhaps the Labor Code included managerial employees from the protective mantle of Title I, Book 3 of the Labor Code. Under the law, a managerial employee is someone who is vested with the power to exercise management prerogatives such as hiring or firing or determining policies on benefits and the like. But note that in the implementing rule, there is an additional requirement for a person to be considered a managerial employee. Under the implementing rule, a managerial employee is someone who supervises two or more individuals. So, even if an individual is performing functions or exercising management prerogatives, if that individual does not have two or more persons under his supervision, under Labor 1, that person will not be considered a manager and that person will not be excluded from Title I, Book 3 of the Labor Code in terms of enjoying the benefits. The next type of employee that is excluded from Title I, Book 3 of the Labor Code would be officers or members of the managerial staff. This type of employment are similar to those of supervisory employment. Note that this type of employment are employees who effectively recommend management prerogatives. And under the implementing rules, there's an additional requirement. A supervisory employee is someone who performs tasks that are considered administrative or clerical, but not more than 20% of the time. The next type of excluded employee under this article will be the field personnel. An employee is considered a field personnel upon concurrence of two elements. The first one is if the employee performs work outside the premises of the employer, and the second one is that the work of that field personnel cannot be determined with reasonable certainty. The field personnel are said to be excluded from the protective mantle of Title I, Book 3 of the Labor Code. Because if you will notice, the benefits in Title I, Book 3 of the Labor Code are hourly based. For example, overtime pay or holiday pay, you compute those benefits by the hour, which means that for you to be able to accurately compute those benefits, you must be able to supervise the time spent of the employees. In the case of field personnel, because they are performing work outside the premises of the employer and the time spent in performing work, it cannot be reasonably determined, then it's impossible for the employer to compute the benefits based on per hour. The next type of excluded employee will be those members of the family dependent on the employer for support. So if the employer employs his own son or daughter for example, and that son or daughter is dependent on the employer for support, then that son or daughter could no longer request or demand payment of overtime pay, holiday pay, or night shift differential for the obvious reason that the support is already being provided for by the employer because incidentally, she or he is a family member. The next type would be domestic helpers or personnel in the personal service of another because these individuals are covered by a different type of law, which is the kasambahay law. The next type of excluded employees would be government employees. These are employees performing work in government instrumentalities or even in local government units. They are excluded because a different set of law governs them, which is the civil service law. When you look at government-owned and controlled corporations, you must make a distinction because some of them are considered government employees for the purposes of our discussion, but some of them are considered employees of a private enterprise for the purposes of applicability of the labor code. So for employees of government-owned and controlled corporation, you look at how the GOCC is created. If the GOCC has a regional charter, then the employees of that GOCC will be considered government employees and therefore they are not by law entitled to the benefits under Title I, Book 3 of the Labor Code. But if the GOCC is created under the General Corporation Code and they are registered before the SEC, then they are considered employees of a private enterprise and therefore the Labor Code applies to them, including this title of the statute book. The next one would be those persons who are paid by result. They are not considered part of the employees benefiting from the Title I, Book 3 of the Labor Code precisely because they are paid by result and not by the hour. As mentioned a while ago, the benefits under Title I, Book 3 of the Labor Code are computed on hourly basis, and if an individual is paid by result, then it's quite impossible to accurately compute the benefits under this title. In summary, there are types of employees that are not legally entitled to benefits provided for under Title I, Book 3 of the Labor Code. And those types of employees are listed in Article 82 of the Labor Code, and they are called excluded employees. In the next episode, we will be discussing labor-only contracting.